This episode is brought to you by that time in 2009 where you could sit down on a Thursday night and watch Community, Parks and Rec, The Office, and 30 Rock, all in that order. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ScreenTest. I am Chaz, and this episode is also brought to you by the time of year where I lose my voice. I am joined, as always, by my co-host and the Sultan of Sitcom, Aaron Milton.
I'm not going to get used to this title change. This is jarring. It's jarring.
I cut it out, but I stumbled because I almost said Real Movie Talk.
It's just second nature there. I do appreciate you calling me the Sultan of Sitcom. That is a title I think I really enjoy. And I didn't think I would until you said it, and now I feel pretty good about it.
The Sultan of Sitcom. To be fair, you did, when we discussed this episode, text me and said, what is a sitcom? What is the definition of sitcom? So I'm nervous about this episode.
That is super important, I think, to this discussion, though.
Yes.
Like, I think being able to properly define a sitcom is, I think, kind of important. Because I think what you would define as a sitcom in, let's say, the 70s or 80s...
Okay.
is completely different than what you're seeing today. And you know what I think really sticks with me a little bit? You know what I think of? Yeah, and you and I are both kind of products of the 90s. Mm-hmm. So we still had a bit of a taste of this. To me, a sitcom specifically had to have a live audience.
Oh, okay. Not a laugh track. Or are you saying just laughs, period? Live audience or laugh track. Okay.
Laughs, period. So, yeah, because I'm sure some of the stuff we were watching probably was just a laugh track and didn't actually have people sitting in the audience. But in my mind... that was absolutely a must for a sitcom. But I don't think that's the case. I think a sitcom is actually a lot more broad. And I think the definition you gave for a sitcom, I think is perfect. Mostly because it makes this thing possible to do.
It's also the literal two words. Sitcom is situation comedy. So I told you it's any show where people get themselves into situation and it's funny.
But I think if you go back to the 80s or 90s, that wasn't necessarily the case. I don't think people would have necessarily referred to that stuff as sitcom. I just think TV has obviously expanded. Mm-hmm. There's way more shows, and there's way more varieties of shows.
Oh, for sure.
I think I could watch some shows and say that is strictly a comedy, but I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a sitcom. Like, by your definition, Impractical Jokers is a sitcom.
Okay.
But I wouldn't call it a sitcom. Would you call it a sitcom?
No.
It is situations with comedy.
But a fictional situation. A situation with fictional characters where they get themselves.
Those aren't real. I mean, they are acting. They are.
I mean, but the people they interact with are real people.
Okay. Would you say Saturday Night Live is a sitcom?
No.
I wouldn't either. So
Sketch variety show.
But your definition... is incredibly broad that you just gave, and you're like, oh, I'm just saying what it is. And I'm like, yeah, but again, I just think TV is so expanded, and that's why I said you need to be a little strict here, because I might get a little wacky on what I'm going to call a sitcom here today.
I misunderstood your message. I thought you wanted a broad definition so you could get wacky. Okay.
I did. That's exactly where I'm getting. But I feel like what you were doing is you were calling me the Sultan of Sitcom at the beginning, but then also kind of mocking me for needing a definition of sitcom. So I had to defend myself, Chaz. You gave me no choice but to defend myself, and I think I did a good job of that.
For those of you who hate this voice, I'm hoping by the next episode it's gone and my regular voice is back. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. There's once a year, if you listen to Real Movie Talk, you know, once a year my sinuses are like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you lost your voice or, just died? And that's where I'm at. That's this time of year. So we're going to power through.
Usually it's a little bit more gravelly. So I'm a little bit let down because usually it's a little bit more gravelly than this, and you get the very specific Batman tone to it. Yeah. This kind of just sounds nasally. This is way lamer than previous years.
I tried to get rid of it, and I've been drinking like hot fluids all day, coffee, tea, water. And then I ended up in this in-between that's worse than both. And I can't breathe, so I got to stop every 10 seconds to catch my breath.
Your body just wants you dead.
Yeah, that's 100%. I do want to take you back, though, Aaron. So if you could close your eyes, jump into the time machine. It's 2009. It's Thursday. It's 8 p.m. at night.
Oh, yeah.
You have the second season, the second part of the first season of Community. You have season 2 of Parks and Rec, season 6 of The Office, and season 4 of 30 Rock, all in that order. Is there a better place in time to find yourself?
I is that kind of the I gotta be careful with this.
That's the end of sitcom.
It is kind of the death of TV as we know it.
Network television.
Network television.
Yeah.
So as we grew up knowing it, it truly is kind of the end of that, because after that, the streaming wars start. I mean, the streaming wars probably pick up a little bit later. They probably have another 5 years after that before it really starts to get a little wild. And I know I've mentioned this before previously on the podcast. I think where it fully hit me that TV was never going to be the same again was when we got House of Cards on Netflix.
Right.
Because it was when Netflix was creating their own content, and not only was I was seeing a show by David Fincher starring Kevin Spacey, and that was like how is this happening right now? How is this little tiny internet company doing that? And truthfully, after that, we never really looked back. It's
true.
That whole idea of you have to wait once a week for a show to come on, and there were usually prime spots. Thursday was pretty big. If I remember correctly, that was like NBC's spot.
Yeah, that's why I brought that specific lineup up. Is in my mind, I cannot think of another time. I think this was the end of the Thursday night must-see TV run.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, when we were getting towards the end of The Office's lifespan, is when they introduced Parks and Rec, and it aired immediately after. So even like the weird type of structuring where you wanted a night where you dominated that night, where people would come on. And nowadays, they release a show and you can literally watch it in one night and it's all over. And then you're waiting another year, maybe 2 years for them to release the next season of that. I mean, look at Stranger Things. Stranger Things, what does that do? Like 2-year hiatuses between seasons? So it's like, really, this is probably prime network television before we kind of lose it completely.
And I'm going to be honest with you, of this lineup, this was perfect for me. This is my senior year of high school, going into my freshman year of college, 2009. Best network television ever, hands down. There's only one issue I have with this time period.
What's that?
Scott's Tots. Worst episode of television of all time.
I'm shocked at how many people like that episode specifically, because I'm somebody who is wildly uncomfortable by uncomfortable sitcoms.
Yeah.
And that is up there as one of the most uncomfortable episodes I've ever watched.
I cannot even tell you the B story of Scott's Tots episode because I skip it every time. It's probably a great B story, but I have no clue.
You know what's great, and we'll obviously get into this a little bit later. The Office has some of my all-time favorite comedy episodes, and it has my all-time least favorite comedy episodes. And what's funny about that is Scott's Tots falls perfectly in the middle of some of my favorite episodes of The Office. Like, to me, that's prime Office. That's just an episode I can't watch in the middle of the prime. Now, much later on in the series, I think it's virtually unwatchable. I think the end of that show is unwatchable. But that particular episode, that one is pretty brutal. Is that though? I mean, there's some rough episodes, but that moment is the worst because it doesn't have resolution.
Right.
Like, it doesn't have good resolution. It's bad. It's pretty crappy resolution that screwed over a bunch of people's lives. Mm-hmm. It's pretty awful.
I watched that episode when it came on, and I've seen it maybe once or twice since, and I watch The Office regularly. Yeah. But even though I've seen that the fewest number of times of any other Office episode, what lives in my head rent-free is still all those kids tripping out because he said he bought them a battery for their computers, and he goes, wait. It's lithium. Yeah. And it kills me. It's so good and so bad.
It is.
Well, what we're going to do today is Aaron brought a list, I brought a list of our top 10 suggestions and our top 10 all-time sitcoms. We'll go line by line, 10 up to 1, and then you and I, Aaron, will work together as diplomatically as possible, and we will together come up with a ScreenTest top 10 greatest sitcoms of all time. Definitive. Episode 2, and we're already making a statement. This is it. This is the peak of the hill. There is no better than this. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump in. Do you want to kick it off with your number 10?
I will kick it off with my number 10. Before I even say my number 10, though, I was very pained by this. I want an honorable mention
Okay.
So I'm just going to put an honorable mention out there, and that's The Wonder Years.
Okay.
The Wonder Years is one of those. It's been a long time since I've watched it, and it's the reason why I have to just keep it out. But I distinctly remember the summer of 2005. It was maybe Fox Family, I think, existed before ABC Family, if I remember correctly. And during the summer, I'm in high school. I don't even think I was driving at this point. I think I was like no, that couldn't have been 2005. Had to be earlier than that. Had to be like 2002. Because I wasn't driving. And I remember I'd wake up every morning and they'd play 5 episodes of The Wonder Years through the entire series. And every morning I'd wake up and watch it. And I was devastated by the end. Still one of the most devastating endings I've ever seen to a sitcom. So that's my honorable mention. But my actual number 10 here. Now, Chaz, I know I asked you for a definition of a sitcom. And this fits here. But to explain where my list comes from, one of the most important things to me was consistency.
Okay.
Are you consistently excellent? And if you're not, are the ones that are very good, how good are they to me? And there are 2 shows I watch consistently.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And that's one of them is 30 Rock, and the other one is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's my number 10. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The episodes that are funny are some of my all-time favorite episodes. The latter seasons that are still going on right now, because it's an incredibly long-running show that just keeps getting renewed and renewed and renewed forever on FX, are not that great. But the ones that are there. So for me, number 10, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Perfect. I thought about that. I left it off my list because I'm not nearly as passionate about that as you are. I've not even seen all the seasons, so I knew you would have it on there. I left it off mine. Since you're doing honorable mentions, I'm a little bit younger than you, and I had the exact same experience as you, starting off watching reruns, and then I eventually caught up with the actual show because it was still on air. But I'll take the younger Savage for my honorable mention and do Boy Meets World because exactly the same reason, except mine was after school. Couldn't drive, was very young actually, and watched Boy Meets World on the Disney Channel after school. My number 10 also takes me to a place of childhood, and this is a show, and I also pulled where you can watch these shows, by the way. I think you can watch Always Sunny on Hulu, I know for sure. But a place that just took me back to childhood, our whole family sitting on the couch, watching this together. It was great fun. It's Everybody Loves Raymond. What a great sitcom.
Wow. That one's a pretty good one. Like, it's not bad, especially considering, is that a CBS show?
It's on Peacock, so I guess it's NBC.
Well,
or
so
they might have bought it.
So is King of the Hill, or not King of the Hill, King of Queens, and that was, I believe, CBS as well. That's also on Peacock. So there might be a weird
trade over there,
because that's a dangerous game. They're picking a CBS show, but I would say old school CBS is a lot better than what modern day CBS is, because my goodness, that's unwatchable. But that's actually not. That is not a bad choice there. Did you have anything else? I did not include where you can stream these things. I forgot this is something you tend to like to do here.
I just like to do it because my list has to be better than yours. And if they can take away, let me go watch this right now, mine's obviously better.
Okay, cool. If you want to watch this now, you can Google where to stream it, because Google still exists. My number 9 here.
Time out.
What?
You're absolutely right. You can Google where to watch it. Never once would you say you can Bing where to watch this show.
Only the most educated individuals would Bing it, like myself. But if you are some common, run-of-the-mill, just slob, yes, you can go Google it. Go ahead. But my number 9 here, this was recently brought up by a friend of mine who was like, that show was really dang good. And I thought, you know what? I really did enjoy that show, but it's been years since I've watched it. I'm going to pull this bad boy back up, but I've been watching through some episodes, and man, it's so good. My number 9 is Malcolm in the Middle.
Oh, it is so good.
It is a shockingly great show, and it, again, consistently pretty great. And you're introduced to some characters or to some actors that go on to have some. I mean, Frankie Muniz exists because of this. Obviously, we don't get Breaking Bad.
That's right.
Without Malcolm in the Middle. So just a consistently great show. My number 9, Malcolm in the Middle. Great suggestion there by a buddy of mine, Tommy. And I've been loving watching it again.
Yeah, Malcolm in the Middle was another one of those that my bottom half of this, I guess, 7 to 10 plus your Malcolm in the Middle, I'm in the same kind of nostalgic-esque mindset. Bryan Cranston, of course, the dad on there. Emma Stone started her acting career on Malcolm in the Middle. Fantastic. My number 9, like I said, still in that nostalgic mindset. The dad episode, the if we're so rich, why don't we have a ceiling? Oh man, you got to give it HBO Max. You got to give it to Fresh Prince.
I almost put Fresh Prince on here. Almost put Fresh Prince because, again, if you talk about influential and pretty consistent, I mean, we don't have Will Smith without that show. Crazy to think how good of an actor he actually turns out to be on that show, considering he didn't do any acting.
That was a big
before
risk.
That point.
No Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, we get no slap at the Oscars.
That's true. We do miss the greatest Oscars moment of all time. We also miss out on the Carlton, the greatest dance of all time.
That's true. Yeah.
That is an excellent one. That's a great choice. Where can you stream that, Chaz?
HBO Max.
Darn it. My number 8, and I would argue in those block of shows that you talked about on Thursday on NBC, this one, in my opinion, what?
You're putting one of those shows this low?
I am.
Oh, no.
And it pains me to
Parks
do
and
it.
Rec.
It's Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec, I will argue to the death, is better than The Office because, again, it is consistently good. And I think its ending isn't awesome, but I would go even a step further. That the Pam and Jim wedding episode pales in comparison to the Leslie Knope Ben wedding episode. It is far better, far more impactful on Parks and Rec, which is crazy to think how the Jim and Pam thing is such a thing. And I thought the wedding episode was mediocre at best. To me, Parks and Rec, that is going at number 8.
Dang. All right. My number 8, you can watch on Hulu, just in case you were curious. This one I loved when I was young, high school age. I rewatched through most of it recently. Forget the last season. Last season's garbage. And there's one character named Todd that makes it to where it doesn't hold up today. But that is Scrubs. Scrubs, such a good show. More medical than Grey's Anatomy. The My Musical episode, Eagle, everything from that show. Spot on, except Todd.
What's wrong with Todd?
The things he says and does would be the reason that Scrubs wouldn't get made today.
Well,
and he makes me wildly uncomfortable. I will argue that the Scrubs episode, My Lunch, is one of the greatest episodes of TV of all time.
Is that Brendan Fraser?
No, that's probably the second best episode of TV of all time. That's the episode where Dr. Cox pulls JD out of a bad spot because his patient dies. And then Dr. Cox's patients start dying, and he just spirals. So good.
Yes.
It can make you go from laughing so hard you're crying to just straight up crying in a matter of seconds.
Now, Chaz, I don't want to spoil it, but I might have that show coming up here on my list very shortly.
That makes our top 10 that much easier.
Yes, it does. Because we know that if we've got any connecting ones, those are the ones that are going to go on there. Chaz, at my number 7, I'm going to pick an all-timer, a legendary one, that I'm now watching through for the second time. Okay. Also, you can find on Peacock. Just surprisingly, I did not think I would ever like this show because I thought it was just too old for me. And it's probably not that funny, but it turns out to be very, very funny. Cheers. I cannot believe how many actors come off of that show. Like how many people become famous because of Cheers. What's, again, funny is I grew up outside of the Boston area. Obviously, the Cheers bar exists there. I've never gone in there. I never really cared. And after watching the show a couple of times, I'm like, And we just lost Kirstie Alley this week.
Yeah. Tells you how long ago we recorded this episode.
Yes, that's if you want reference on when we actually went and recorded this. Kirstie Alley just passed away, but again, made her start on Cheers. So I've got Cheers at number 7 for my all-time list.
Well, I have journeyed over to Disney Plus for my number 7.
Oof.
So I've talked about shows there towards the bottom that I liked watching with my family when I was a kid. Now I'm going to talk about a show that I like watching with my kids in my current family. And that is Bluey, man. Bluey is a fantastic sitcom. I'm calling it, based on the definition we settled on, I'm calling it a sitcom, and it's in my top 7.
Chaz, I had a little bit of help when I put this thing together. Because I was kind of like, I just need like a comprehensive list. Mm-hmm. And Rolling Stones did a top 100, and Bluey was on there. It was
really?
Like number 48, so it was pretty low on there.
Oh,
but it kind of like, it jarred me, where I was like, wait, what?
Time out. You said they did a top 100?
I think it was 100. It might have been
lower than that. And it was in the top 50?
I might be completely wrong. It might have been 98.
Okay.
I can't
Well,
remember.
it was on the list, though.
They had it split into two different lists, so I can't remember which one I was looking at, but I remember it being early on one of the sides. But
Okay.
either way, it was jarring to me to see that because I was like, wait, what? Why is this on here? But yes, Rolling Stones would agree with you that Bluey deserves to be on a list. I don't know. They weren't putting it in their top 10, but hey, when you're looking for quality kid content, it's difficult because most of it is annoying as crap.
Oh, yeah. Coca
And Bluey is not
in
annoying.
our house.
Yeah. Bluey is not annoying. The only reason why I wouldn't put something like Bluey on there is if my kids weren't there, would I put on Bluey on my own? No.
Yep.
Chaz would. I would not. But hey, that we'll leave that argument for the next part of this here. My number 6, to me, is up there as one of the most clever sitcoms ever created. Just the writing is so pristine. That's Arrested Development. Great cast, top to bottom. Not a single poorly cast person on that show. The writing is some of the best writing that you'll ever get in comedy. Arrested Development is number 6 for me.
Well, my number 6, and I feel like we're going to get in territory here where we're just changing numbers. I feel like our top 6 is going to be very similar with a couple. You're going to pull some wild cards out on me. I already know. And I have at least one that I know you've never even watched. So
Your wild card is Bluey. What else do you have here,
That's
Chaz?
true. So my number 6 is 30 Rock. I have it pretty low of that Thursday night grouping. But yeah, it's so consistent, so well written, so well acted. But I chose none of these for their cultural impact, the impact they had on television. I just chose ones I liked. And if I'm going back to sitcoms, of these next 6, 30 Rock I'm going back to the least. So 30 Rock on Peacock, number 6.
I mean, you're 100% wrong on that and everything you've said about it. I mean, I'm at least glad that it made the list for you because I feel like, I've tried to get you to enjoy some of the things that I really enjoy, including this next one. Number 5 on my list is BoJack Horseman. BoJack Horseman is wildly underrated on Netflix. Again, as far as it goes for consistency, to me, it's pretty dang consistent from beginning to end. Some of the most emotionally impacted episodes of television I have ever seen are Talking Animals. And it's crazy that the writing can be so good and so impactful that you forget, honestly, that you're looking at talking horses and cats and birds because the human emotion is so rich and so deep. But not to mention, some of the funniest moments are such these subtle, brief moments that happen. And you're like, that's just good writing, that it can hit in such brief moments and it really gets you. Like, it really cracks you up. I think you've pointed out even just so many of the posters in the background are just funny puns, basically, mostly animal puns, that are just really, really good. BoJack Horseman has one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen in that last season. And so for me, it easily ends up on my top 5. So BoJack Horseman, number 5.
Man, it's a good show. Looking back on it and thinking back on it, I think the episode that you say is one of, if not the best episode on television, period, is probably my second favorite episode of the series.
What was your first then?
It's a toss-up between the 3. It depends on the mood I'm in, but they're all, it's funny, I tend towards the emotional stuff. So my top 3 are the one you're talking about, the penultimate episode, the eulogy episode,
Yeah.
and the episode from his mom's perspective.
Yeah.
Those 3,
all 3 of those are really good. I would throw in one more to the mix. And again, it's more just the cleverness of the writing and kind of the impactfulness of this is the episode where he's underwater and he doesn't know how to, he didn't know you could turn on the voice. So the whole episode is silent.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, that's kind of a bold way of creating an episode where there's literally no dialogue, no sound until the very end when somebody talks to him and he realizes it's a button the whole time. I thought that was kind of funny. Those are all of those, but that was, again, doesn't have the same emotional resonance on that episode, but I would agree. You can, if I sat down and went through a list, I could probably come up with, 10 incredible episodes of BoJack Horseman. But yeah, I'd agree. Everything you've picked there are all very good.
Well, my number 5, you've already mentioned, you've already talked about, so we don't have to spend too much time on it. Parks and Rec. No. I mean, the cast in that, where they are now, what they've done now, coming off of the creators of The Office making this. How can you have so many home runs right in a row? That's insane. Even going on to The Good Place. Phenomenal. But yeah, Parks and Rec, my number 5.
All right, so Parks and Rec, your number 5. Going on to my number 4, and again, I'm not going to spend much time on this because you already did. I have Scrubs at number 4.
All right, so that's surprising. That's one I did not expect to be on both lists.
Oh, I did. We've mentioned how much we like Scrubs. We've mentioned this before. And again, fairly consistent, I would say, when you get to the end, and this tends to happen with sitcoms. They just kind of don't know how to properly end their show to where it's still true to its roots and it feels impactful at the same time. And then you're usually losing people. And
I will argue that they ended it perfect, but then got greedy and did a season they shouldn't have done.
That's what spoils it for me. What spoils it for me is the post them as teachers kind of thing. That never worked at all. And I can't divorce that this should be something separate. Like it should be a totally separate show. Because I think it was treated as something completely separate, right? It wasn't completed as...
It was a spin-off, but it was so unreceived that they bill it as the last season of Scrubs instead of its own series.
Yeah. And so I can't divorce them. But if you can, then yes, you could say Scrubs is pretty darn consistent from start to finish. I would say it's a little less cartoony at the beginning. It seems to get a little bit more cartoony as it goes along. Like JD's character is a little bit more serious and grounded, but later on they realize it's better if he's just kind of more funny. And it gets a little bit better as it goes. But yes, Scrubs absolutely deserves to be on this list.
All right, my number 4, again, you've already talked about. I'm amazed it's at your number 6 and not in your top 5. Will Arnett, Jason Bateman, David Cross. Oh my gosh, Arrested Development.
Yeah, that's a great show. I've debated whether it should go a little bit higher up. The only reason I didn't is it's a little bit short, and the Netflix version of it is not as great. So that's why it falls a little bit further down for me.
Yeah, it has the same problems as Scrubs. Just leave the last season off. Maybe the last 2 seasons, and it's a better show.
Yeah, at some point, the magic is gone. So trying to revive something just isn't going to work.
Yeah.
I feel like people have been getting a little bit better at kind of reviving things, but generally speaking, it just doesn't work. And man, did COVID not expose more of the issues of that? Because when COVID happened, you had a bunch of bored actors who couldn't really do anything. So they did these kind of weird reunion episodes, and they just weren't funny, and they didn't work, including 30 Rock. It did not work at all. It was a complete waste of time. Yeah. This one was super, super tough for me to put at number 3. Now, this is a show I grew up on, and my brother especially is a fan of this show. And the other day, he just started quoting moments from the show, and it just brought me back. And I'm like, man, that in its prime, when the likes of Conan O'Brien was writing for it, it just is some of the best comedy out there. And that's The Simpsons. I got The Simpsons at number 3. I believe that Rolling Stones article had it at number 1 as the greatest sitcom ever created. But again, inconsistent, where you can tell when writers are changing. You can tell when some of the comedies feels a little bit forced and it loses out on its clever touch. And it's the reason why I have to keep it down, just because I think it lacks a bit on the consistency side. Dang,
you can watch that on Disney Plus.
You can.
That's one that I've seen maybe 1 or 2 episodes of. I want to revisit.
That's it?
Yeah, especially the Treehouse of Horrors. I want to go through that little mini series they got going. My number 3, I know, is not number 1 or number 2 for you, but that is New Girl, because you've never watched New Girl. I have quoted New Girl to you for how many years, and you've done how many episodes?
If I were honest with myself, I'd say I've probably done about anywhere between like 10 to 12 episodes.
Almost.
And then I'm usually kind of out.
Yeah. You got to wait till Winston gets good. He's not good in the first season.
And that was back when seasons were 21 to 24 episodes, something like that. Nowadays that's kind of crazy to think about, but that's kind of how TV ran back then. But and I've maybe have seen bits and pieces of other episodes. I always say the worst person in that show was Zooey Deschanel. Everybody else I kind of liked, but it just never really stuck with me. So I never stuck with it. But someday, Chaz, someday I will.
I kind of had the same feeling with New Girl that I have with Scrubs, and that is the least likable person is the protagonist.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. Chaz, obviously you've mentioned what will eventually be on my list already.
Yeah.
But my number 2, and I'm going to guess this is your number 1, is Community.
Okay.
I have Community at number 2. Again, pretty consistent. Sure, when they revived it on Yahoo, it wasn't great, but it's not bad either.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was like they should have done this. But every character on it is great. Even the background characters are great. It's super quotable, has some of the funniest episodes I've ever seen, has some of the most creative episodes I've ever seen. This has no business being good, I remember watching the very first episode live because they tried to hype it up. It was, again, one of those NBC after one of their bigger shows. I don't even remember what the show was. It might have been Parks and Rec. And, check this out. They advertised it like crazy, and I watched that first episode, and I was like, ugh, that is boring. And Joel McHale at the time was super popular because of Talk Soup on E, which I didn't watch talk shows, but Talk Soup was hilarious. So it was like really disappointing when I watched that first episode because I was like, oh, that's really what Joel McHale's going to do now. But you stick with it, and it is awesome. Community, that's number 2 for me.
Do you know that he was tapped for an American version of the IT Crowd?
I could see that.
He was supposed to be the Roy character, but if you can look up the pilot, and it's a shot-for-shot remake of the same lines, everything, same beats.
They kind of did that with when they brought The American Office. You can see side-by-side comparisons of that. And there were some obvious changes that they made that was going to make more sense for American audiences. But yeah, that is always kind of trippy when you realize they're just bringing a show over and they're like, well, we don't even have to write a whole lot because it wrote itself already.
Yep. Number 2 for me, you can watch on Netflix and Hulu. It has some of the best moments, best characters in all of sitcom history, but it misses so much. Season 3 is my absolute favorite episodes and absolute worst favorite episodes. They refer to season 4 as the gas leak year because it was so bad. They inevitably landed on Hulu. No, what was it? Yahoo. And that season was garbage. Community is my number 2 sitcom.
Dang, so we were even on Community. We both had it at number 2. I actually have no clue what you're going to have here at number 1, but Chaz, you've already mentioned it. 30 Rock is my number 1. It is my most watched show. I will always go back and fire this show back up. And I don't think I hate a single episode. I can't think of an episode that I hate on there. I don't think I like Alec Baldwin as a person, but gosh darn, I like Alec Baldwin on 30 Rock.
You love to hate him, though, right?
Huh?
You love to hate him.
Well, yeah, but he's funny. He's got a mentorship to him that's kind of great. I'm a huge Tracy Jordan's great on this show.
Mm-hmm.
As
Tracy Morgan.
Yeah,
flip those.
Just so lazy. Just calling him Tracy Jordan when he's Tracy Morgan in real life is pretty great. Just great from top to bottom. But just one of my favorite shows. I can watch any season. Every season's good. To me, this is my all-time favorite sitcom is 30 Rock.
Oh, man. All right. My number 1. Listen, I feel like I got to talk myself out of a corner here. 1, I didn't want to put this as my number 1 because I knew everybody would be like, this is a podcast where you're supposed to think about stuff intellectually and break it down. And literally you put this as your number 1. This is everybody. You ask anybody off the street what the best sitcom is, and people who know nothing about sitcoms, nothing about TV, are going to say this show. But at the same time, it is the one that I will go back to if I need background noise. I quote it all the time. Some of the best characters, yes, there are a lot of huge misses with this show. But I also knew it wouldn't be in your top 10. So I had to think about that and put it so high that it has to land somewhere in our conjoined top 10. You can watch it on Peacock. It's The Office.
I really struggled with that. I really struggled with that because it has some of the all-time greatest moments, and it has... I think I just walked away from that show so enraged by it. Like when Michael Scott is gone, the show becomes so bad, and the final episode to me is so atrociously bad that it's spoiled the bunch for me. But when we're talking prime Steve Carell, it's incredible and redefined kind of comedies, because then we started to do this whole documentary style comedy. Ends up becoming a bigger thing, and we're still even seeing that today. And What We Do in the Shadows is still kind of taking on that kind of setup. So it changed so many things here, but it was so uneven and so inconsistent. I just couldn't put it on here. You know what? I'm genuinely surprised though. I mean, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. If we had a woman on this show, I feel like Friends would have been on this list.
Yeah, I was going to mention nobody's top 10, nor an honorable mention for Friends.
And I don't think Friends is all that funny. I think it's okay, and it's one of those shows that's very inoffensive to me. If it's on, I'm not angry, but I'm not like excited. Like,
I'm going to seek it out.
I'll watch it. it's not like watching Big Bang Theory where I cannot sit in the room while Big Bang Theory is playing. It just is so annoying to me. So it doesn't fall into that category. So it just doesn't really belong anywhere. So that's our top 10 lists between the two of us. I don't know how we are at all going to come to a consensus on an overall list, but we should at least start with what are ones that we both have. So we both have 30 Rock.
We both have Community at number 2. So does Community need to be our number 1?
Community probably needs to be number 1. I feel like that you are absolutely right on that one, Chaz. That one's just so high up on the list right now. Mm-hmm. We both have Scrubs.
Mm-hmm. We both have Community, Arrested Development, Parks and Rec, 30 Rock, Scrubs.
Okay. You Parks and Rec. Okay.
I think the next one we had kind of even was I had Arrested Development at 4. You had it at 6. So that would be the next highest for both of us.
All right, so let's put Arrested Development at 2. I think you're probably right. I think the writing on that is...
I think Arrested Development needs to be 3rd. I had 30 Rock at 6, but you had it at 1. So if we're balancing out, I think 30 Rock should be 2nd.
Okay, so we're going 1 Community, 2 30 Rock. Because and then you say 3 Arrested Development.
I think so, yeah.
And then we've got Scrubs and Park and Rec. Since those are combos, they should end up in our top 5. So, do you put Parks and Rec above Scrubs? Or do you go Scrubs above Parks and Rec? I'd be fine either way. These are so close to me.
Yeah, you had Scrubs at 4.
I had Scrubs
and Parks and Rec at 8. I had 8 and 5. So if we're just going off of math, it would be Scrubs, then Parks and Rec.
Yeah, okay. So far, we've got Community at 1, 30 Rock at 2, Arrested Development at 3, Scrubs at 4, Parks and Rec at 5.
Now, this is where it gets fun.
Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit wild.
Yeah. I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for The Office, and I'm going to fight for New Girl.
You know what? I'm going to give it to you. The Office, for its impact, probably belongs on this list. So I'm totally fine. I'm not going to number it yet.
Right.
But I'm going to put on The Office. And here's the deal. I was kind of glad that you said New Girl, because every clip that I've seen of New Girl is very funny. I don't know why. I haven't watched the show. And it does seem like it's a genuinely good cast. I absolutely have no problem with putting New Girl on this list either.
Okay. So now those two are going somewhere. What from your list are you like,
Rolling
these have
Stones
to be in?
Did not include it on their list.
Really?
But...
They included Bluey and not New Girl? That's mind-boggling.
That is a little mind-boggling. That's what I said. I said this is a little bit crazy to me. I
feel like Cheers needs to be somewhere on here.
I like Cheers. If I have to pick of what I would fight for on this list, is I would go Cheers, and I would put The Simpsons on here. The Simpsons is the longest running sitcom in the history of television. It's still running to this day. I don't even know how many seasons they're at this point. Somewhere in the 40s, I think. So to me, The Simpsons would need to go on this list strictly for its longevity alone. I think it deserves it.
So that's 4 more. We have 5 more spots. We need 1 more.
We need 1 more on this list.
I have what I would put there.
What would you
have an idea out of what's left on this list? What you would put there?
I mean, it should be BoJack Horseman, but I think
I have an idea.
I think you picked Malcolm. What?
Oh, okay. Never mind. Malcolm in the Middle was my choice as well. So now it's out of those. Everybody Loves Raymond's great. Fresh Prince is great, but we conjoined agree on Malcolm in the Middle.
All right.
So let's work from 10 up.
All right, number 10, I would go New Girl. I would think the other guys beat them. No, you know what? I went 9 on Malcolm in the Middle. I go 10 on Malcolm in the Middle.
Okay, yep. I'm
Let's
down
go
with
10,
that.
Malcolm in the Middle. What do you think should be 9? Office, New Girl, Cheers, The Simpsons.
Oof, just out of longevity and impact, I'm willing to concede. I don't agree with it, personally. I'm willing to concede New Girl, based on what we have left, to go to number 9.
Hey, New Girl made top 10, so you need to chill a little bit here.
It beat out Bluey.
That's 9. To me, I think 8 should be Cheers.
Cheers, yeah.
Impact is great. Tons of people come out of that show that are still doing comedy today. All
right, here's the big
we're people of the 90s. This was past. It was even before our time. But for me, Cheers goes 8.
Like I said, I've seen 2 episodes of The Simpsons, so I'm definitely for Simpsons at 7.
All right, 7, and that means 6.
Okay, that was
is
easy
The
to
Office.
argue. Yeah, I was going to say, what has higher highs versus lower lows?
This is a great list, I think, from top to bottom. So let's go over it one more time for everybody. We've got 1, Community, 2, 30 Rock, 3, Arrested Development, 4, Scrubs, 5, Parks and Rec, 6, The Office, 7, The Simpsons, 8, Cheers, 9, New Girl, 10, Malcolm in the Middle.
Those are the best sitcoms of all time.
All time. It's been determined. We've done this.
Yeah.
Don't even look up. Don't even Bing Rolling Stones top 10 sitcoms of all time or top 100 sitcoms of all time. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. What we just gave you, we gave you arguments as to why this is the best list. So you know it's scientific. These are the best sitcoms to watch right now, and you should be looking at them.
With the combined list, let's honorable mention at a tied 11, Bluey and BoJack Horseman. We'll take 2 animated things at the complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Next list is going to be top 10 shows starring animals.
There you go.
And,
Bluey
and BoJack
right
Horseman will be on there. We can guarantee that.
All right. Well, that is your list, and that is all I have today.
See ya.